Hello everyone and welcome to another game that just finished from the Chennai Grandmasters. It is Pranav versus Vincent Keymer, and again we have a beautiful sort of creation as both players have created this where both players just decided to play brilliantly. So it's not often the case. I know previous video also was about that. Since it's that kind of a tournament, they're inviting young players and everyone wants to show what they can do. So let's check it out. Pranav with white opens with pawn to e4 and Vincent replies pawn to c5. He opts for the Sicilian defense, knight f3, pawn to d6 and bishop to b5. The canal attack where we already said that you can block with knight c6, you can block with knight e7, or you can block with bishop to d7. All three are played and all three are perfectly fine. Vincent opts for knight d7. We have castles, a6, and bishop back to e2. Now, in the Magnus game that I covered a couple of videos ago, I said that bishop to c4 isn't all that great. The main line is bishop to d3. This is what pretty much everyone plays. But Pranav, testing Vincent's preparation here, goes bishop to e2. And okay, Vincent goes knight g2 f6. It's a little bit easier to play now that the e4 pawn is unguarded, so knight f6 definitely makes sense. d3, we have pawn to g6, preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop, pawn to c4, bishop to g7, and knight to c3. We have pawn to b6, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop, d4, captures, and now bishop to b7. We have pawn to f3, strengthening on e4, castles kingside, and bishop to e3. We have pawn to e6 and queen to d2. Seems like a Sicilian that you almost always have. And as usual, it's a question of whether or not black can execute the d5. Now, interestingly, d5 is the top move recommended by the engine here, and also there is a game that was played this year between Sadbek Akhmedinov and Artem Uskov, where pawn to d5 was played, but black lost that game. The game continued with captures, and after bishop to a6, they traded on h6, captures, d captures, bishop captures, b5, bishop to b3. And it's a perfectly fine position. Black even a little bit better, but wasn't able to play well, obviously. But in the game after queen to d2, we don't have the pawn to d5 move, which is the top move recommended by the engine. We have queen to c7 by Vincent. And now it's not even in the top three, so obviously it's a human move. Vincent is out of book, and we are going to have a very good game here. We have rook a to c1. Also, Pranav playing pretty much instantly. He still has an hour and 30 minutes on the clock. Rook a to c8 by Vincent, and now pawn to b4. Again, played instantly. He knows, obviously, that it's the best move, as it often is. Queen to b8, saying that, okay, I don't really want that rook staring at my queen on c7, and I might double up here, something like rook c7, rook to c8 maybe. We have knight b3, and now, again, you could strike with d5, but knight to e5 first, putting pressure on that c4 pawn, as it is currently undefended, and knight to a4. Now the rook defends the c4 pawn as well, and you are threatening to capture on b6. So pawn to b5, knight to b6, and Vincent loves what he sees. He just plays b captures on c4, creates a passed pawn at the expense of an exchange. Okay, knight captures on c8. We have rook captures on c8, and the knight is hanging, so knight to a5, putting pressure on c4 and the bishop, and just pawn to d5, defending the pawn here. And I think we can all agree that the exchange sacrifice for having a passed pawn on c4 is definitely well worth it. We have bishop to d4, putting pressure on the knight, knight to c6, now attacking the bishop and the knight, and we have a trade, captures, and pawn to e5. Now, this does limit black's options somewhat, but also limits white's, as you really could use that diagonal for your dark square bishop. But okay, the knight comes to e8, we have pawn to f4, and now bishop to f8. The bishop now puts pressure on that b4 pawn, pawn to a3, and knight to c7. We have rook to f3 and bishop to a4. We have bishop back to f2 and knight to b5. Vincent, all of his pieces are in perfect squares. He's ready to execute pawn to c3. So what can Pranav do? He plays pawn to h4. Vincent could continue with c3 right away. He decides to prevent pawn to h5 by Pranav, and rook to g3 with some ideas of bishop captures on h5, and Vincent plays king to h7. Best would be bishop to h6, but this makes the game a lot lot more interesting, because now Pranav plays the absolute best move, and that is bishop captures on h5, starting starting a kingside attack. And Vincent, well, I'm not going to tell you what he played, because this is definitely a critical position. You have to. There's only one way to go. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move for Vincent that does not lose the game. While I give you a couple of seconds. So the only move that does not lose the game is bishop to h6, and this is the one that Vincent played. Also, the one I recommended instead of going king to h7. But point is that if g captures on h5, there's the simple queen e2. And how are you stopping checkmate? You can't. If you play king to h5, okay, you prevent queen captures, but there's rook g5, and then queen captures on h5, and that's it. It's mate in one, or in a couple of moves if you want to really be a troll. So here, after bishop captures on h5, bishop to h6, the absolute best move by Vincent, and now bishop back to d1, as now your bishop definitely is hanging. You can't, there's not all that much you can do here. So bishop back to d1, bishop to e2 would have been a little bit better, but bishop to d1 was played. Now c3, attacking the queen, queen e3, and bishop captures on d1. We have rook captures on d1 and rook to c4, putting pressure on that f4 pawn. So also compliments of the bishop on h6. Rook f3, defending. Rook g4 is also possible, but looks a little bit clunky. Knight captures on a3, and now the pass pawn is ready to continue marching forward. We have pawn to h5, knight to c2 with an attack on the queen and the b4 pawn. H captures, f captures, and queen to c1 now, attacking the knight, and just knight captures on b4, and not a lot you can do here. It seems like you can capture that c3 pawn, but not really. If you capture on c3, knight a2, and you lose that rook, as your queen on c1 is hanging as well. Best way to remain in the game is rook to d4, but it's already a very, very difficult position with little time on the clock. So here, rook to h3 was played. Pranav said, all right, I'm going all out. It's either this or nothing. And okay, Vincent played pawn to c2. We have rook to f1 and knight a2. Seems like it's game over. Once you move the queen, the pawn promotes. All of a sudden, queen to a3. What is this? Well, this is a pretty tricky move that I will only explain once you guys tell me what Vincent played, because there's only one move that wins the game here for Vincent. Have at it. Of course, you only need to think about the most important square on the board, and that is the b4 square, queen b4, and now Vincent is winning. The problem with queening, obviously, is that there's queen e7 check, and now whatever you play, you're just getting checkmated, or you're going to lose a whole lot of material, and then you get checkmated. For example, queen captures on e6 check, king to f8, queen to f6 check, king e8, and now you can just play rook captures on c1, rook captures and king h2, and that's it. You either capture the bishop and then a queen, rook to h8, or the bishop moves, and then it's just a nice rook to h8. So there's really nothing black can do here. But after queen to b4, Pranav has no moves here. That's why rook captures on h6. Best way it would be to actually capture the knight on a2. Just queen captures on a2, and then you allow the queening. Okay, rook captures. You're going to play rook captures on c1 with check, and that's it. It is now, of course, completely winning for black, but yeah. You could play bishop to g3 and then queen f1 with some checkmates, or whatever black plays. You could also block with the rook, then queen captures on e5, bishop coming to f4. Everything is winning here for Vincent. So after queen b4, Pranav tried rook captures on h6. One last hurrah. King captures on h6, and now queen to h3 with check. King g7 and pawn to f5. You could also capture on e6, but it doesn't do all that much. Rook captures on f4, and there's just not a good way to continue. This is not possible. The queen is covering that square, and other than that, you really don't have good options. So after king g7, pawn to f5 was played. Again, trying something. It's not bad when you're dead lost. E captures on f5 with bishop to e3, now going after that h6 square, but just rook to h4. Vincent being extremely precise here. We have queen f3, c1 queen. and that's it. Bishop captures on c1, knight captures on c1, and he was in this position on move 46 that Pranav resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. It seems like the knight can be captured. That is, however, far from the truth. If you capture, there's the simple queen b6 or queen d4 check anywhere along this diagonal will do, because if you go queen to f2, of course, just a nice rook h1 deflects the king, captures, and if after queen b6 check you try king to f1, it is also possible, but then rook h1 check, king e2, queen b2 check, and the rook on c1 is lost, and also you will very quickly get checkmated. Some of you like it when I finish the game all the way to checkmate. So let's say white plays something, rook to e1 with check, king d3, rook to d1 with check, king c4. You don't even need the queen. You can go rook c1 check. King has to go back. Rook to c3 check, king to d4, and now just a nice queen to d2 with checkmate. So yeah, very nicely played by both of them. They both wanted to create. They both wanted to make something, out of this day. But it is Vincent who takes this one. It was a crazy fight. That bishop captures on h5 was most certainly a valiant attempt. But Vincent saw right through it. He did not touch the bishop. Played bishop h6, and that's it. You have to go bishop to e2 or queen e2. Once you go bishop to d1, you are already worse. And yeah, it's just like that when you face such a great player. It's not enough to play one brilliant move. You also have to have a series of brilliant moves in order to take down a player like Vincent. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you want to raise your power level over 9,000, first link in the description below. Download Lotus Chess and start improving your chess today. It's an amazing app. I've been using it for almost 2 weeks now. Loving it. I've raised my rating, and not only that, I feel like I understand what I'm doing. I know that's not true, but I feel like I'm understanding. And yeah, I would like to thank Rajesh Kota, Phil Bawa, Fisher Exteriors, Tasadva Nagwaru, and Alexander Schaefer for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.